What is up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit, and today we're going to be talking about Week 13 in the Overwatch League, the final week of qualifiers for the Summer Showdown. All right, so before we do that, though, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. Everybody out there who's been supporting me, thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. All of you guys are new, checking me out. Thanks a lot for stopping by. If you could hit a like, hit a subscribe, that would be great. Hit that alert bell and let you know when I have content coming up. I usually do Overwatch League content 2 to 3 times a week. This week it's going to be 3 because we have a knockout round. And Saturday night I'll throw something up, probably either Saturday night late or early Sunday morning. Just a little preview / prediction, my thoughts on the knockout round before it happens. All right, so before we start into Week 13, let's talk a little bit. There was some news, and I mentioned it on the last episode. I wanted to talk a little bit about it. So the Department of Justice investigated the Overwatch League for their soft salary cap system that they have in place, and they put out numbers and stuff like that. Jacob Wolf and Liz Richardson reported on this. It's a pretty, not lengthy, but it goes into depth a little bit about what happened and what exactly is going on with this investigation. Their soft salary cap and their competitive balance tax. Basically, in a quick nutshell, so the Overwatch League has a salary cap, a soft salary cap. If you guys follow professional sports, it is the maximum amount you can spend on your roster, and theirs includes a. If you go over said roster, there's it's basically a $2 to 1 for every dollar you spend. So you spend an extra $1 on a salary over the it's $1.6 million cap. It becomes $102 if that makes any sense. So if you pay somebody, say you're at the cap and you pay somebody on your roster, you bring somebody in new and you pay them $100,000, you actually have to pay them $200,000 because you pay them $100,000 and $100,000 goes into back to the league. So that's how that kind of works. The basic crux of the problem is that they have this salary cap, and per the country's antitrust laws and things like that, in order to have said salary cap, you have to have a players' union association, and you have to mutually agree upon said salary cap. So just briefly, the chunk of the article, at the center of Kiernan's inquiry is the lack of the players' union, which would allow the Overwatch League to apply for non-statutory labor exemption. This status has been granted to the NFL, NBA, and other pro sports leagues that have labor unions. The exemption originates from a 1965 U.S. Supreme Court Amalgamated Meat Cutters versus Jewel Tea Company, which said union employer agreements are outside the purview of the 1890 Sherman Act, landmark piece of antitrust and legislation. It gets into a lot of legalese and things and cases and stuff that I don't profess to know anything about. They contacted Activision Blizzard. There was no criminal inquiry into anything. But it brings up an interesting point about the players' union and association or something along those lines. And it just, from listening to people and reading stuff, it's kind of a weird position to be in esports. It's not like, we've had these long-standing unions since the 60s in professional American sports. And most likely, I don't know too much about European or Asian or any kind of other leagues. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, most leagues, some form of players association, which is not exactly a union, but it's an organization of players, the blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. And you guys know what a union is. I'm not getting into that. This is not a legal class or anything like that. But what it says to me is that, per the laws of the United States, which you think somebody at the league would have looked into this. When someone said blah, blah, soft salary cap, someone in the legal department should have known, especially when you're dealing with things, with government and leagues and salaries and stuff like that. There's labor lawyers and there's people involved in these things, especially at a company like Activision Blizzard, which is not a small company, that would say, hey, in order to do this soft salary cap thing, per the, all the stuff that we just talked about, you have to have a labor union, some sort of players union association, something in order to file for this exemption in order to be able to do this. What it says for the league, the players, I would like to see them have an organization anyway. You're in a a league, you want to have rights and all this stuff, and there's nobody fighting for you necessarily. I don't know the situation as far as Overwatch League and stuff like that, but there are occasions where, there are agents and things like that kind of are work in balance with leagues, which would be, in this case, Activision Blizzard and stuff like that. I mean, they've declined comment a couple times on the investigation. You might need a players association, but with the short length of careers in esports, some of these guys might not feel the need to do that. And I don't know what Korean culture is like as far as unions go, or European culture. I know there's a little bit more in European culture to an extent, but if you can get the players together and do this, everything would be fine. I don't know if the league is going to get fined or anything like that, but it's a current investigation. It seems kind of like formal and scary, and they're going to shut the league down and all that. I don't think anything like that's going to happen. But it does bring up the point that I brought up in the past, that there needs to be an association for the players. But if they feel that they don't want it, I mean, other esports have them, but I believe Riots, they created it for the players. So I don't know if the players necessarily want it. And if anything, it would be the players from North America, possibly some of the European players that are involved in that. And like I said, I don't know the cultural implications for South Korea uses unions. I don't know, what their feelings are on that and all that stuff. So it is something that's kind of out there. I mean, for me, like I said, I would like to see a players association anyway, just for other things. When you get into quality of life and some of the other things, more for me, I don't care about their salary cap. Is it necessary? I think there should be a basement salary cap in this league too. They did not say anything about that, because you have teams that are, this happens in Major League Baseball, which does not have a salary cap system. They do have a luxury tax system, but there's no cap. There's like a number, kind of like it's similar to this, where if you go over X number for your salary, you're getting this luxury tax. But teams like, back in the day, like the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Dodgers and the big market teams are doing this, and teams like the Pirates and some other teams were just basically raking in the money from these people, because they distribute the money out to some of the teams that are not using, lose, and they're not using less the salary, and it's this whole weird distribution thing. But I don't really want to spend all day talking about this, but I think they should get something going. Like I said, I don't care about the salary cap thing. I think it's perfectly fine. I'm sure there's some teams that go over it, like Dallas, San Francisco, maybe the Gladiators, a couple of the Chinese teams that have big money backing and stuff like that, and they also have 12 players, because you figure $1.6 million, that's a lot of money as far as, where you're going with salaries in an esports league at the level of Overwatch League. Are some guys getting paid more than what you would consider an average? Probably. So we'll see what happens with this ongoing investigation. Okay. Legal bullshit is done. I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, because I know that it is a topic that's been floating around, and I wanted to give my 2 cents on it. It is what it is. They do this to all these leagues get investigated, whether it's esports, professional meat sports, whatever you want to call it, stick and ball things, leagues, all that kind of stuff. They get investigated. Anytime you're paying money out and money, the changing hands, sometimes they look to do things in the best interest of the quote-unquote worker, employee, player at this point. It is what it is. They want to make sure things are legit. If there's anything, Blizzard might get a fine for running a salary cap system, but I don't think that they said there's no criminal investigation, so that generally means a fine, or do you fix this now, or we fine you, something like along those lines. It's nothing egregious where they're, they're going to get shut down or anything like that. Okay, bullshit aside, let's get into this week's action. All right, we're almost 3/4 of the way through the season, guys. All right. Summer Showdown knockouts are almost upon us. We have a lot of teams that have a chance in NA and in APAC to get in here. I could have picked a good 6-8 matches this week that mattered, but I picked 3. And this week we're going to be talking about the big Battle of Texas, where Dallas has actually got a homestand going between Dallas and Houston. We're going to talk NYXL Fusion, and we're going to talk Glads and Justice to wrap up the week. Just real quick, a couple other matches that are going to matter. There's a lot of them on the docket for week 13. We got a couple of big matches in here. Obviously, these all have implications. they're going to involve all the teams you're kind of expecting. We have Shanghai taking on Hangzhou. We have New York, both Hangzhou matches, New York Hangzhou and Hangzhou Shanghai. The Glads have 2 big matches that involve teams that are also involved, with one with Toronto at the start. We also have Toronto and Dallas, another big matchup. So there are a lot of good matches. So let's start diving into this week. All right, so first match we are going to talk about is the Battle of Texas. All right, another Battle of Texas is upon us. And this time, Dallas is playing a home game. They're going to be at home, kind of a live viewing experience for the Dallas fans at the Arlington Arena where they had their home stands. And Houston's playing from Houston. They're not going to go up there and all that stuff. So I don't, logistics and all kinds of stuff probably were involved in that. I don't know. But it would have been cool to see a full LAN event. That would have been awesome. I'm really interested to see how Dallas plays in front of, the crowd and all that. That's going to be something new and different for an NA team. We also have, I forgot to mention in the beginning, we also have a homestand for the Shanghai Dragons for the whole weekend. And that'll be fantastic to see, what goes on there. And like I said last week, do they really need to have home field advantage? I mean, they're better than every team in that division anyway. Okay, so, all right, Dallas-Houston. Here's what I'm thinking with this one. Now, let's talk Houston first. They've looked good. They're one of the best teams in NA, and I often forget to mention them in scenarios where I'm like, oh, so the tournament, I always throw out Dallas, and I say this and that. I always forget to put Houston in there, and that's not for any kind of slight of Houston. It's just for some reason I do that. I don't know why. Maybe past years disdain for the Outlaws and whatever I had going on there. One of the keys for Houston, to me, in this are going to be make Dallas play, force Dallas into situations they don't want to be in. I say this every week. When you force, the Mayhem did this, they forced them into weird situations with the sim teleporting thing. They were kind of on it with, there was a few times where BQB flashbanged them coming out of teleporters. They were running Orisa comps. They were doing really well against it. Now, San Francisco runs these Orisa Sigma comps really, really well. So, and right now at a level, obviously, Django is way better than fucking Checkmate is. I'm not knocking Checkmate. This is realism here. Obviously, Django's a way better main tank. Even on a bad day, Django's better than Checkmate, but that is going to be a big factor. Them being able to, and I'm sure they watch some of the Mayhem team and they're saying, hey, you know what? We can run this as well, if not better than the Mayhem. So, it's up to Dallas to be able to work around that, because running these teleporter things is kind of new, and playing with the sim thing is kind of new on both sides. You don't know exactly what's going on with that and how to really fully flesh out how to use sim yet, but they're working on it. But I think there's a way for them to exploit some of that, like the Mayhem did, on a higher level. And also another thing is, don't be afraid to go aggressive against these guys. You have a great DPS line that can stand up to Doha and Sparkle and what they do in Dante and Happy. So don't be afraid to go at them. And I think their tank line is really good too, that can hang in certain aspects with Hanbin and Fearless. You're running a double shield. Piggy is fantastic. His Sigma is unbelievably good. His Diva is really, really good. And Django is good on Reinhardt and Orisa. They can hang and maybe dictate a little bit to what Dallas does, up against Fearless and Hanbin, who are going to have their moments no matter what, because those two guys are outstanding. You could even say that many people, including me, I'm calling them like the best tank line in the league, one of them, for sure. And Hanbin is probably, if not the best, close to the best off-tank right now in the league. He's a key factor in every match. His synergy that he developed with Fearless really fast just proves to you how good of an off-tank he is. I mean, let's be honest, you could have called him the main reason before Sparkle showed up to Paris as what kept them afloat and going, and just he was fantastic last year, and he's even more so now. So you got that going for you if you're Dallas. Now, Houston, their support line also, just real quick on them, Crimzo is turning out to be one of the best flex supports. He's the best Western flex in my mind right now. He's one of the few, so maybe him and Khan you could go with. I mean, Kanzi, but Crimso's really good. I think he's proven himself as to be one of the best flex supports. He's going to be key in this. And also, Juby has seemed to be leveling up, and as he's gotten more comfortable and a little bit more synergy with these guys, he's been in more. We haven't seen Jake hit the stage really at all, which in my mind is good. You don't have to rely on Jake coming in to do stuff. He can focus on coaching and all that kind of thing, and he doesn't have to come in and play Brig and all the whatever and what have you. But I like Houston's chances in this. Now, Dallas, here's the thing. Dallas is phenomenal. They adapt. They are just really, really, in NA, the best team. Because of their adaptability, their fluidity, the fact that they can play multiple different comps. Some of them they don't play as well, which is exploitable by other teams. But they could come out and really fuck with Houston if they wanted to. They like doing the sim comps and stuff like that. Maybe I don't think they're going to sour on them, but I think they could do a couple of things and say, hey, they're kind of figuring it out. And you might see them try a little bit of dive here, especially if they're running some Orisa comps. Now, because you can get Dohan Sombra, you get Sparkle on Tracer, and you get Fearless on Winston. You could do some damage here. And, of course, Hanbin doing whatever he does, which is amazing. And your support line, always amazing, in Fielder and Jexay. They could really screw with Houston and come out and do dive. I don't think they're going to do that initially. I think they're going to want to work that sim comp in. If they can get to teleporting where they're not telegraphing the teleports to, where the set areas and, this is the plan. We're going to go, okay, so if Houston sets up here with their Orisa comp, X spot on Nepal, we're going to teleport in. And, Houston starts figuring this system out by watching tape and whatever on them as this meta goes forward. I think maybe leaning into a little bit of dive here for Dallas would not be a bad thing, because you have Doha and Sombra and you have Sparkle playing really well on Tracer. I think you could do a lot of damage, and it could force the Outlaws out of their game plan. Yes, you have two really good DPS players in Dante and Happy, but I would take my chances a little bit and get them out of that pick that's kind of, or that comp that they're really, really good at, and playing something they haven't really practiced that much. It could be something that Dallas might have to lean into a little bit, because I don't think they want to get into a double shield v double shield kind of thing. I would favor Houston a little bit in that on the tank line, which is kind of weird to say that you favor something, with Fearless and Hanbin. But it's more of a playing it a lot more, a coordination, you get used to it, all the things where you fleshed out a lot of the what if scenarios that happen when you're playing a comp that much. So I like them a lot, and Houston more if it's a double shield. But overall, this is what I'm going to say about this match right now. It's going to be great. I think it's going to be not the last time we see these two teams, potentially, depending on where they finish, as far as Summer Showdown goes. So I am liking the Dallas Fuel in this. I'm taking them mostly because just the overall, I just think they're overall better and they're a little bit more adaptable and they can do a little bit more things. I'm not saying Houston can't at all. I'm just taking Dallas in this 3-2. I think it's going to be a banger, and they're in front of their home crowd. I think they're going to be just jacked up and ready to go, and the crowd's going to get behind them, and I think they win 3-2. So that's the first match. Let's hit the second match. We're going to go over to APAC, and there were a lot of matches to pick, and I didn't really know which one I wanted to talk about more, but we're going to hit the NYXL Philly match. I was thinking Hangzhou and Shanghai, but ultimately I went with this one because there's a lot of unknown factors. There's a lot of unknown factors with Hangzhou as well. I'm kind of off the bandwagon with them, kind of on still. I'm straddling the fence, and plus it's Shanghai, and the end result's going to be I'm picking Shanghai. I mean, you guys know that. If you pick against Shanghai, you're high and not Shanghai. Maybe you are Shanghai. I don't know. The NYXL and Philly. All right, so immediate advantage to Philly here is tank line. You know my thoughts on New York's tank line, and it's nothing personal against these guys. I just don't think that they're what New York needs to succeed right now in Yak Peng and Bianca. I don't feel like these metas and things like that are coming up. Maybe it would be a different story if they're in NA. I don't think so. But the comps that they're running are just not in their wheelhouse. And I like Mono and Hotba better. Poco, I believe, is still in France because I looked things up and I'm like, I thought he was going to be here because I saw some tweets and stuff like that, but he was tweeting from home in France. And that was like a week and a half ago. So I don't know where he's at, like if he's in, if he's out. Either way, whether it's Hotba and Mono or Mono and Poco, I still like Philly in this a lot better as far as the tanks go. Jonak is playing really well and low-key better than I think some people are seeing, because I don't think many people are watching NYXL matches and looking at them because you get mixed results and, you know, the time difference and all that stuff. I think Jonak's playing as good as he's played in the last, way better than he played last year. There's some iffy moments with Friday, I think. And overall, Philly's support line is just vastly better. And I like them a lot more. And, you know, you can even go into the DPS. I think it's closer in the DPS line than people want to give any kind of lean on with New York. I think Flora and Feather are playing really, really well, and I think they're the hard carries on this along with Jonak. But you got Carpe EQO, potentially Shockwave at this point. I think he's in Korea, and because the Fusion tweeted something out. So he's potentially there. You have Shockwave, you have EQO, you have Ivy, you've got Rascal, you've got a bevy of really good veteran presence players on the DPS line that can cover pretty much anything you need to do for Philly. New York's got a weird intangible, though. I don't know where they come up with these wins sometimes. I don't know if it's teams just faltering or it just feels like they clutch things out weirdly. You know, Flora has the big game or Feather is playing out of his mind. It's usually something like that. Like the last time they played, Jonak went off. There were just like a whole bunch of scenarios where these guys do that. If they can get any kind of adequate, and I don't mean hard carry play from their tank line, I think they'll be in this match. But overall, it just all of it favors the Fusion right now. But I do think it's going to be a close match. I just am going with it being a close 3-1 in favor of Philly, mostly on the back of Funny Astro and Toby when they've been flopping them out in and out a little bit. But it's just Alarm. And like I said, their tank line is just better. Hotba has those moments where he yeets stuff and he's not great. You could say that Mono sometimes is a little too passive and then goes a little too aggressive. And there's some issues, but they're not horrific. I just think they're just better than Bianca and Yakpong right now. And I'm leaning on the Fusion to win this 3-1. Last match we're going to talk about. I spent a lot of time on Dallas and Houston because there's this they're closer in certain aspects of their teams than Philly and New York are, but New York does have weird intangibles and stuff like that. But let's talk about the last match, and it's the last match of the weekend, regular match on Saturday night. So we have the Gladiators taking on the Washington Justice, two teams that are kind of up and down. The last we saw the Justice, they were dispensing of Checkmate and the Mayhem rather easily, and the Gladiators got reverse swept. So here we are. Okay, so they both have games earlier in the week. I believe Washington plays London on Friday, and the Gladiators have Toronto, which is also a big game and going to be a tough game for them. But I kind of think they're going to win that one, so that's why I wanted to focus on this one. So depending on what happens in that, I don't think Washington's going to lose to London. If they do, yeah, whatever I'm saying here means absolutely nothing. The Justice and the Gladiators have been leaning a little bit more into some dive compy stuff. I kind of like that. They're running some Rhine Rush. They're doing the things. And the Justice, it's really hard to gauge how good or bad the Justice are because they got absolutely smoked by Atlanta. And then they buried the Mayhem, which they kind of destroyed. And people are saying, well, it wasn't that bad. It was really bad. They did not look that great. The Mayhem just kind of were Papige class in that game, kind of but to Washington's credit, after getting smacked in the face really hard by the Atlanta Reign, they came back and they buried the Mayhem. So I don't know what to expect from them as far as what they really want to play. I like it when they play dive. Well, I like it when Decay gets on Tracer and you can have Assassin do either Echo, possibly Sombra, or whatever you want him to do. I like that a lot. I just get Decay on the field, for crying out loud. That's my battle cry with them. The one thing that, and I continually say this about this team, is their support line frightens me. They're playing decent enough. Bebe and Closer are playing better than I expected, yes. But are they better than Moth and Shu right now? And Skewed when he comes in and plays Brig or whatever. I really want to see if they can hang with these guys, because Shu has been playing really well. Yeah, he got hard focused and stuff like that by Oni God against Paris. Maybe they figured out a way to neutralize Shu a little bit, and maybe that carries over to Washington. Main problem for Washington is the support battle. Right now, Mag is decent enough. He's more comfortable to me, it feels like, on the Winston. His Rhine is okay, and his Arissa is okay. If you can get into a dive scenario, which the Gladiators will play dive with you, or against you, or however you want to do it. They're not afraid of doing dive either. I mean, we saw them play that against San Francisco. They were running the Bird Ring on Sombra, either Kevster on Genji, or something else in that realm. Assassin and Decay are, in my estimation, tick above Bird Ring and whoever they decide to bring in, whether it's Mirror or Kevster. What they need to do, really, with Mag and Fury setting the tone and opening up a lot of space and opening as much space as they can for those two DPS guys to take over the match. That, to me, is one of the key factors here. Making space for Decay and Assassin to take over the game. And Mag and Fury should be able to do that, but my fears lie on sometimes those guys get countered hard. And teams are looking, it's almost like this weird initiation with Mag. It's kind of like what happened to Checkmate last week. It's like, all right, just knock Checkmate out and we got this. I mean, sure, you can say that for most comps and all that. But a lot of teams like Atlanta, they ran the Orisa and they ran the Orisa comps and the Reinhardt comps up against Washington, and they smoked them. Because I don't think Mag is as comfortable on Reinhardt or Orisa, and I don't think the team is comfortable playing in those comps with the heroes that they have to play. And also, I think there is going to be a big difference in supports if you get into that. I think they're comfortable playing dive. I feel like this team, that's when they're at their best and they look the best. But the problem is the Gladiators, as much as the narrative goes with them, is they're not versatile. They're more versatile than the Washington Justice right now, and this is the reason why I'm going to take them. I'm taking them 3-1 in this. Reasonably close 3-1. I think there's going to be a point where the Gladiators kind of figure things out, and they play at the level that they were playing earlier, against the Shock and things like that. I don't know if they're necessarily going to run dive to do this, but they can not necessarily flip on a dime, but they can run a reasonably good comp with Reinhardt and Diva or Rhine, Sigma even, or do the Orisa Sigma thing, just as long as they don't get into some of the wacky hero picks and strange stuff that sometimes they do in big matches. If they stick with the standard stuff, I think they're going to win this 3-1. If like I said, if something weird happens where they lose to Toronto, they might be a little more desperate and they might be looking to do some different things. But I think just overall, they're more versatile than Washington right now. And I think they have a little bit better grasp on the main NA style meta than the Justice do. So I got the Gladiators 3-1. Okay, so those are the 3 featured matches of the week. Now, it's time for the rundown, is where I take the whole slate of games and I run down each one of them, rapid fire succession, give you a map score and my picks. All right, so right now, I think I lost 2 games last week at the most. What's my record? Let's look. I believe I'm like 78 and something. Let's see. I am officially a 78 and 29. I might have done the math wrong. I'm not 100% on that. I'll have to go back and look. First match of the week, Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the Atlanta Reign taking on the London Spitfire. Atlanta 3-0. Next up from NA, we have the Houston Outlaws taking on the Boston Uprising. I have Houston winning 3-1. Over to APAC, we have the Hangzhou Spark taking on the New York Excelsior, and I really did that? Okay. All right, in a strange pick. All right, yeah, I thought I picked something different, but I have the Hangzhou Spark beating the New York Excelsior 3-1. Hopium on that pick. Anyway, there's my first loss, guys, if you're looking for it. Next match, Philadelphia Fusion taking on the Chengdu Hunters. I have the Fusion winning 3-1. Final match for Friday in the AM. The Shanghai Dragons take on the Los Angeles Valiant. Obviously, a 3-0 win for Shanghai. Over to NA on Friday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Justice taking on the London Spitfire. I have the Justice winning 3-0. Next up, Gladiators taking on the Defiant. I have the LA Gladiators winning 3-2 in a close one. And then, like we said, the Dallas Fuel taking on the Houston Outlaws in the weird homestand thing for Dallas. Dallas 3-2. Over to APAC for the final day of qualifiers there. We have the New York Excelsior taking on the Philadelphia Fusion. Fusion, as we said earlier, 3-1. All right, next match in APAC. We have the Chengdu Hunters taking on the LA Valiant. We will take the Chengdu Hunters 3-0. Final match in APAC, we have the Shanghai Dragons taking on the Hangzhou Sparks. Shanghai 3-1. All right, final day from NA. We have the Reign taking on the Uprising. Atlanta 3-1. Next match, Dallas Fuel taking on Toronto Defiant. I have Dallas 3-0. Final match for the NA region, the Gladiators taking on the Justice. I got the Gladiators 3-1. Okay, that is going to do it for the rundown, guys. And also, that is going to conclude this episode. So, don't forget, I will have an episode up either late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, depending on schedules and what have you and whatnot and all that stuff. But I'm going to get something out that's going to have some knockout round predictions and all that kind of thing. That's going to do it, though, guys. Thank you very much for joining me. All of your support's greatly, greatly appreciated. All you new guys out there, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for checking me out. Please hit a like, hit a subscribe, all the YouTube jazz. That would be fantastic. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody stay safe. Have a good rest of your weekend. Enjoy the matches, and we'll talk to you again on Saturday night / Sunday morning.